Hi, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Book. I've had some people ask me about the whole process of book writing, so this series of videos will be applied to all Novel Nexus projects moving forward. To start us off, I'll actually be looking at my newest release, which is Nevada. I'll be covering everything per entry from main characters, research, tone, art direction, and all that other stuff. I'll also talk about how I actually made the book. Tools of the trade. Before getting started on a project, finding what I need to actually write the work is the first priority. Some people use Google Docs or Microsoft Word, but personally I use Nimble Writer when drafting my first text. This isn't a sponsorship or anything like that, but I'll tell you why. Nimble Writer is cheap to use, non-intrusive. I also use a lot of reference images and logs when I write, and I'm able to refer to them without stretching the window or the page like the other ones. The only drawback is that it's Windows only, so if you use Macs or Linux, you're kind of out of luck. But once that's out of the way, I do a formatting check on Microsoft Word and lastly put it on Atticus, and links for all that will be in the description. Let's get started. What is Nevada? I started the project as a fun experiment to test my writing strengths in a new perspective. Prior to Nevada, which is cemented in sci-fi, I wrote historical fiction. For quite some time, I spoke with friends about how much sci-fi tends to have such a depressing outlook on things, and when I stumbled upon the solarpunk genre for the first time, I had to take a look, though there were some things that I wondered and they were focused on. Research. With such sparse source material to really define the genre compared to its cyberpunk cousin, I had to curate a specific vision I wanted to go for. As the book takes place in the year 2090, I had to do a lot of speculation and heavy research to make a believable world. I looked over aspects of biology, machine learning, energy source development, and countless representations of political theory. To keep things fresh, I opted for a divergent alternate future, where I picked the year 2020 as the last canonical year, before everything started to shift in a different direction. 70 years of technology and political science are basically two different worlds if you consider the jump between, say, the early 1900s with empires still running the show, and the decolonial 1970s. For me, I looked at solarpunk and saw it as an opportunity to really try something different. Solarpunk tends to favor the cozy setting where the stakes are lower, and while these can be nice reads, I wanted to make something that's got more grit to it. Naturally though, solarpunk rejects the grimdark, oppressive nature that cyberpunk has and looks in a different direction. Solarpunk is also different from just straight techno-optimism, where the latter touts tech as the only solution without really tackling the ethics or political nature involved with such advancements. I think this presentation of solarpunk embracing technology, but with the healthy knowledge and priority of the community, works best, both from a theory and a literary perspective. Tone. All my writings are geared for an 18+ audience, so I allow myself to go deep into questions that would be relevant for that audience and of the characters. Compared to a lot of solarpunk media I have seen, the setting of Nevada sticks its landing as post-revolutionary. Inspired by successful uplifts of revolution, of which there isn't much, it offers a look into where the good guys win, but it's a close shave, and there's work to be done. It's post-revolutionary in the sense of there being this active residual trauma that permeates the world. It's one where people had to fight these long, protracted conflicts against capital to secure the futures they wanted. The people have to go somewhere, and these things don't resolve themselves overnight. The premise of the plot is this. Nevada focuses on the novel's namesake, who was one of many federal prosecutors tasked with jailing the last living corporate criminals responsible for ruining the planet. A routine case goes horribly wrong. Follow Nevada as she embarks on a quest of vengeance to find her attempted killer after a car bombing leaves her disfigured, only to rise again as a cyborg. A solarpunk novel with ripping political intrigue, social activism, climate change, robotics, and bombastic energy weapons are the name of the game. Now stay with me. While this isn't typical of what people may expect, allow me to dive deeper. Capital will do anything to survive, including burying itself and hoping people become complacent with it gone. Settings-wise, it's only been about 50 years, a generation or two since the big transition occurred, and there's a lot to reckon with that. I think about these long, generational struggles that encompass today, and see how this will be informative. For me, a flawed world is absolutely necessary to highlight the good that people strive to do, and the road that looks like. Caring is important and rewarded for doing so. If the world is a light that is fading, Nevada is the match that keeps the flame going. Fire is important for warmth and protection, but don't forget it can burn too. Nevada goes for a large-scale view of the world, accounting for millions of people, and with the viewpoints of other nations involved rather than focus on an insular community. Although science has gone an incredible way and has helped people, there is a dark reckoning from the past that has made addressing the challenges of cleanup a real task for the future. Art direction. Nevada is one of my newer works where I incorporate more pieces than just the main characters, which has been fun to do. I work with the wonderful Anna as my main character designer, and she hits the mark every single time. Characters, depending on where they are, feature distinct styles that leave them both unique and right at home. The design of the surface itself, at least in the way I envision it, is a lovely reclamation of that hopeful future we were promised Frutiger Aero style people once yearned for, and a revival of the 1970s. Think bright colors, vivid natural wood, but built with much more modernity and sustainability. A resurgence of many indigenous fashions and building styles dot the landscape and provide variability in regions. Homes have tactile feeling buttons for sliding doors, conversation pits, the works, but there's also sleek charts of environmental data and integrated housing units. Just because we're focused on promoting a cleaner future doesn't mean we have to be boring and lack style. The novel takes a high-tech, high-life approach where there are the staples of futuristic writings, i.e., robotics, cybernetics, and the like that are around, but these are examined through the political left sphere critique. Ways to integrate these aspects into daily existence and how to do it without exploitation, ways to divest from neoliberal ways of thinking that we've been shoveled through our entire lives, at least if you're in the United States. The main country, known as the Solar States, is basically built from the ground up after the ruin of war, where alternative energies such as nuclear and renewables are being used to power cities, neighborhoods, and construct buildings, enclaves of people coming together. Gone are the highways of the old world. Cars melted down, repurposed. Sprawling suburbia has been replaced with tighter living spaces and grounds for agriculture and community centers. With many influences, I borrow some visions from interpretations such as Jacob Hoffman's series Images Under a Solarpunk World that showcases some of these cool ideas. Nevada also borrows heavily from the cyberpunk perspective for its oppositional force. The main locale, at least for a good deal of Nevada's sections on the book, are in this hyper-industrialized megacity known as New Dallas. An aging monument to all things capitalist, New Dallas poses as the alternative, dystopian future that the world was heading in, had the megacorps Amatec and Union Global remained supreme and the world failed to fight against injustice. A literal underground city for the rich as a last resort, it becomes the catalyst for all sorts of events. You can feel the tension, the state oppression, the loss of agency for those involved to preserve the bottom line. Authority reigns supreme and it's a desperate race to the bottom. It's a cutthroat world that needs a ray of kindness. For Nevada, I thought about the idea of someone going into this place from a much more solid foundation, seeing the squalor of New Dallas for what it was, and changing it for the better. Characters. Let's talk about characters a bit. Nevada has an incredibly diverse pool that makes up the world, and while not all come off as friendly and inviting at first, they do encompass a world that makes it feel very real. The main character herself, Nevada, is drawn to action by what happened to her. At age 35, I opted for an older protagonist, an adult with a career, a life all around. Like many son children of her generation, her childhood was spent playing in the outskirts of old as people banded together to build a new world. She's driven by both the sense of revenge on a personal level, but also the principle she was raised with after seeing the squalor of New Dallas. She's empathetic, but not naive. Nevada knows that one person can't do it all when doing something as massive as what she sets out to do, but she's going to raise a lot of hell. Nevada's right hand, Himari, is the catalyst for a large amount of the book. Her dispute with the main villain is entrenched in events beyond Nevada's knowledge, but they're brought together on mutual interest. Himari is a clone of an elderly woman that lives within New Dallas. She represents only a small segment of society, but Nevada finds Himari in a situation where she finds herself with memories of the past and the new one she forges as a 25-year-old. A technical genius, Himari's original was responsible for the development of modern robots and an assortment of scientific advancements. One of the main trio and the first robot character, Sunshine's a bot out for themselves above all else, at least at first. Sunshine experienced World War II as a fighting machine and is shaped by the world of violence around them. They take great pleasure in crushing those that they see beneath them, which includes other robots and that of humans in the Cyberdome. Like Nevada, the robot also seeks revenge and sees common cause. At 50, the manufacturing robot has seen dozens of models succeed them. There is real fear of the day that they become obsolete. And once that day comes, Sunshine seeks out Nevada's partnership, curious about the latter's desire for a better world, as true strength, and to forge their own future. Nevada's grandpa, Atlas, is the man who's defied the odds and has seen both the United States fall and the Solar States rise. He naturally serves as an ally for Nevada on her striking quest. Born in 1996, he's often the vessel used to explore how someone of today's culture would identify from the solarpunk future and some of the growth involved to get there. His own personal narrative isn't one for me to spoil just yet. But know this, we could be him one day. Not all of us, but some of us will see 2090. Kuros is a third party, an outsider from the African Union who finds himself as both an ally and an obstacle for Nevada. His primary goal is to gather intelligence to bring back home, whether that be reverse engineering advancements once restricted to the West, or getting scientists to defect for projects. A trained diplomat and spy, he often resorts to the latter of his expertise as he's called upon to New Dallas. Posed as an unconventional ally to the board of directors, Kuros' placement is peculiar, but his intentions are for a much greater cause, at least that's what he likes to say. The second robot character, Hack Slash, is the counterpart to Sunshine's misanthropic view, wanting to merge robotic kind with humans, but he's not really sure how to do it. Like Sunshine, he can be found in the Cyberdome, but lives with an elderly worker. He works with Kuros on a couple of jobs while he tries to figure out something he calls the Singularity, a merge of machine kind that transcends earthly requirements and keeps the world free of material exploitation. He tries to find meaning with himself and to justify his own existence. Think of him like a robot monk. A few hairs shy from a Metal Gear Solid villain, Barry is a callous scientist and colonel serving in what remains of the United States military. Unlike many, Barry had seen the service firsthand and the progression it made and damned it all for his goals. As a member of the board of directors that runs New Dallas, he is the source of much conflict in the book, where Nevada must face him to put a stop to things once and for all. Filled with the desire to transcend humanity, his research complements this approach. Driven by vengeance and American exceptionalism, he guides the city of New Dallas into a ceaseless wheel of production to make a grand war for glory. He will not hesitate to eliminate even his closest allies if they prove dispensable for his ambitions. The anarchist representation for Nevada, Gale and the organization he works with, the Golden Insurgency, are the main force that Nevada allies with. A group made up of all the disenfranchised you can think of. A young college dropout, Gale is more tactically minded than pure brawn. He respects Nevada's devotion to the cause and offers an alliance, provided she does something for the cause first. Nothing in this world comes free, but Gale is determined to show others differently. Between hacking vending machines to feed the homeless, giving pamphlets and distributing medical aid, and guarding the streets from some gangs, there's a lot to say about the organization. Gale's war with the board of directors is as long as he can remember, and he and his group want to make an independent New Dallas once the dust settles. Can they do it? The Gallic is an interesting character. As an indigenous woman, she signals a change of the times, a positive one that serves both a symbolic and material victory to represent the country on the global stage as decolonization continues. As the succeeding leader, she is faced with a number of challenges, things often neglected by her predecessor to address, and tension between the pair. Her relation to Nevada is small at first, with a curiosity at her circumstances. Nevada's parents work in Hidalgo's cabinet throughout the story and guide her along to face one of the biggest crises of the late 21st century. With a bold vision, she must deal with forces within and those on the outside. Lastly, we have Premier Candy, the first representative of the Solar States. She is beloved by millions and is responsible for much of the structure seen throughout. While her and Nevada do not interact directly, her influence is hardly left unacknowledged within the story. She serves as both an ally and a pointed oppositional force to her successor as Hidalgo learns the ropes of the job and how to be an effective balance toward a tumultuous world. Crafty, charismatic, and cunning, Candy is one to be watched carefully, but she may just surprise you. Is it punk? Punk within its meaning usually refers to rebellion, nonconformity, and a DIY ethic. When coming up with Nevada, one of the things I naturally had to consider is where does solar and where does punk merge in this world? What does one rebel against if the place you're living in is for the most part pretty okay, or certainly better than it is now? It then came to me, and the very idea of the world being better and people actually coming up with solutions for things is in fact that. The perspective I decided to take is it not punk to care about others? In an age today where apathy is at an all-time high, I think caring in itself is revolutionary and counterintuitive to an individualistic culture. If people are sick, they will be treated and given help instead of dying on the street. While the Solar States encourage collectivist values, the affairs of Hidalgo and the Central Committee are ultimately self-contained and that's by design in universe and within my direction. They make no laws to impose on people, they don't really have any domestic power, and people are led instead by indigenous leaderships that account for their voices and their representation. People pool resources and time together for public works, tools have communal use, people develop and trade zines, retrofit old homes with new standards, restore antiquated technology to combat planned obsolescence, among other things. There are structural questions asked in the book where people ask, is this working? And if so, how do we move from there in the best way possible? Personally, I can't think of anything more solarpunk than seeing the oppressive forces of capital existing and taking the risk to go down and dismantle it yourself. Let's talk about some other stuff. Is it gender? Yes, no, and everything in between. At the time where certainties such as people's identities are not only questioned but targeted against through hostile legislation in the media, Nevada makes a hard stance in affirming that people of all sexualities, genders exist and are integrated into the world. The discourse today surrounding gender identity is functionally extinct in 2090. Not that it means that it isn't important, but that it's an established universal truth. Characters that are referred to as explicitly transgender or non-binary, for example, are in good company. The use of pronouns isn't controversial. People can modify themselves to incredible degrees with the technology of the future, and going into routine surgery is as simple as going to the dentist. Radical politics and the LGBTQ community are intertwined, and we would not be where we are without decades of bravery. I find it important to remind us, those of us who are not part of vulnerable groups, that advocacy in fiction can also help translate to real struggles as well. Technology. Here's where we go into the spec of speculative fiction, the solar and solarpunk. What kind of cool tech exists in 2090? Well, we don't have teleportation or anything like that, it's still the 21st century after all, but I decided to take a semi-grounded approach towards what sort of development does occur. The shift that facilitates technological advancements is through a device known as the Half-Dome superconductor invented in 2020 by Omnitech. With this catalyst, all sorts of transformative innovations hit the world. Cybernetics are one of the big key technologies that affect quality of life within Nevada. They, along with a slew of other measures such as better health options, allow people to live up to 120 years on average compared to today. Most people actually don't use cell phones or home computers like that in the current era, instead using an integrated system that handles a lot of these secondary functions. For some, implants function as genetic regulators to handle autoimmune diseases, done for gender affirmation, or just as a general desire to augment their bodies. There is also a countercultural group among them known as naturals who opt to go without for various reasons. Some may do it for religious or personal beliefs, and that's okay. Food, meat in particular, is often grown in labs, virtually eliminating factory farming practices of today. On that end, science in general has taken a rapid evolution when paired with the death knell of capitalist development. Open source programs and the abolition of copyright revolutionizes innovation for collaborative efforts. Cloning is a lot more advanced, with stem cells and organs used routinely for surgery. Cloning for rewilding purposes helps restore long-dwindling animal populations into something better. Innovation is often two-sided, where the solarpunk aspect of Nevada rejects the darkness of such technologies, but they are acknowledged. When this is the case, people come together to find ethical solutions. Terraforming is still highly experimental in 2090, with much of climate restoration performed the good old-fashioned way, but there are certain groups working to help automate some of these practices. For materials no longer relying on oppressive labor performed by the Global South, the world looked to space. Asteroid mining is a thriving industry with efforts focused on the stars and providing essential metals and other materials. In a complex world, peace doesn't always mean pacifism. To establish independence from corporate powers, an actual challenge to overcoming fascism at their doorsteps required mass mobilization and the proliferation of arms. Energy weapons in the Nevada universe were originally made as developments coming out of the Corpo Wars. By 2035 and 2040, the Sunspots invented makeshift energy weapons as a way to destroy their robotic opponents, tasked by Omnitech and Union Global, and remain part of the toolkit into 2090. They operate by powering high-capacity beams that basically cook their targets over a period of time. Robots. Robots themselves are actually getting their own category, as they exist as both a technology form and a social class in Nevada proper. You might be asking, what the hell are they even for? In my case, humanoid robots are aware of their status as mechanical beings and navigate the world according to that philosophy. They have a fundamentally different understanding of function, almost like a culture of their own. Robots have their own challenges, of course, dealing with the legacy of being produced from a line where they once served as weapons of war, and integrating into a society where they can't really decide if they're equals, tools, or something else. The class system based off bronze, silver, and gold for robotic intelligence used by many groups in Nevada are an example of compartmentalizing these thoughts. If a society prides itself on caring about all life, what happens when that life is artificially made but has real consequences? Does it still have meaning? For instance, we have the Natasha and Boris class spots that operate as domestic units in New Dallas. You order one from the factory, it comes with an encyclopedic amount of knowledge. Under the Silver class, which has human-level intelligence. Bit of a situation. For them, it's often a contentious issue if they should adopt more human mannerisms to integrate better or find their own direction. A lot of robots are actually usually pretty content with their functions, really only finding issue in cases where they are inhibited from completing their goals. They're powered by the desire to achieve logical outcomes, and that can differ in a lot of ways. One robot, for example, decides to run for office near Dallas after noting a disparity between food production and starving citizens in their district. Citing that this is an illogical outcome, they adopt a platform based on addressing food insecurity, not knowing that this is built to reinforce existing class structures. Often people ask me if robots are supposed to be a stand-in for racial minorities, and while some of their struggles parallel, that is not meant to be the case here. There are already minorities in Nevada which are represented to the characters and in separate scenarios. Robots are just a drop in the complicated formula that comprises the future of 2090. Political theory. While the world of Nevada can come up as a stark contrast with a more cozy approach with serious things in mind, hope is the core of the book and design. In particular, the triumph of good and what that looks like versus unabashed evil. In this case, evil is represented through two main factions, the board of directors that run New Dallas, and Greater India, an eco-fascist nation that broke everyone's expectations. As for the good, that's up to you to really figure out. The world of Nevada is transitory from a much harsher time, and the road to a healed world is not pretty. People will die for their belief to have a better future, and it can be bloody. Without going into too much depth, I looked through quite a few substantial works and coming up with some of the agency involved in the book. One of the things that Nevada attempts to do is cover a wide variety of paths that the rest of the world have taken on their quest to achieve a post-capitalist future. It keeps in mind historical ties and other avenues that take an extra 70 years to develop, untethered from today's structure, and half a century without the US being around. You have the African Union adopting a pan-African approach, advocating for worldwide revolution, while South America embraced anarcho-syndicalism with the state as but a memory. India became an expansionist power with right-wing juntas riding the coattails of anti-Western sentiment to take power. Nations in Southeast Asia formed an Indo-Pacific League to maintain ocean health and secure the Pacific. The Middle East, a quagmire of even worse proportions, as once the world left fossil fuels, they became economically defunct in a generation, where the royal families feud over scrap. What can we agree on, though? The profit motive is over, where people work for the fulfillment of others and sense of self. Classical ideals and patriarchal structures are dismantled. Technologies are open source with local and sustainable production of goods. In the purview of New Dallas, and even the solar states to an extent, you get the perspective of marginalized peoples and the working class. But there isn't only classes to struggle. Intersectionality is important, with decolonization as a focal point for the work. The solar states are not the only country in the world, and they have a significant mess left by the former United States, both in the rebellious rump state of New Dallas and the waking mess of foreign policy decisions that both Candy and Hegelic attempt to fix. Nevada makes the argument to dismantle organized fascism and insidious liberalism, it requires a stronger hand, and remains critical of authoritarian developments. It focuses on the idea of having a synthesis of strong people-centered government and collective action of the people that guides the 22nd century. There is an agency and collective goal of people to right historical injustices. Full admission, I do not ascribe to the anarchist line that many solarpunkers exhibit, so your results may vary with this work. That said, I think Gale and the Golden Insurgency are one crucial part of the puzzle, but there are some gaps that cause tension in the book and later on. Implementation of that desired future isn't going to be perfect, and infighting among the left is as common as the sky is blue. Now, after throwing a bunch of stuff at you, I'm here to say that Nevada tries to meet people where they are, and to put some healthy speculation into a developing genre. The idea of a future without capitalism is going to vary, and our own bias can definitely get in the way of that too. Instead of one or the other, it takes an evolution on the established successes of the previous century and presents something to show. Anyway, as Chico Mendes once said, environmentalism without class struggle is just gardening. So thanks for watching.